Recording started.
Well, I don't really know how I'm going to do this. I would wish that I do not have to edit anything, so I'm going to try to do this in one take. This would be like a trial version, but here we go. I got to take us back to the very beginning, months ago, where KJ, my other staff, found Johnny Boy 702 in the DayZ chat, complaining about wanting to play official servers, but he hates official because of the cheaters. And KJ asked him why doesn't he play community servers, and he said he was wrongfully banned and he can't play any community servers. The short version, which there is no short version, but Johnny says he was playing with his team on Northman's, and they saw some cheater activity that they suspected was admin abuse. They reported it, and then they immediately got banned as cheaters. Now, at the time, right now, it is May 2024. This was, I don't know, January 2024. Northman's actually was being accused of admin abuse a lot online and in other places. And it seemed possible that Northman's was admin abusing and just banning people. I don't know Northman's. I'm not saying that there's any weight to that, but we like to keep an open mind. And Northman's had no proof for the cheating within the community ban situation, I guess. We did talk to Northman's, and they gave us their account. And Johnny and his co-player, Anarchist, both got banned for player ESP. But there was no proof, and like that the admins attached. And Johnny had his story, and we did our best to give them the benefit of the doubt. Before Johnny or any of his boys landed, me and KJ talked to Johnny, not only in a ticket, but also in VC. And we told him that we feel for DayZ players that get wrongfully banned and then they can't play on any community servers. Like, it's got to be terrible to be wrongfully banned and not be able to play on any community servers, because what other community servers typically do is they do a shared ban. So they see someone that is banned by a community server, and then other community servers just SB. They share ban. And this is a perpetual thing where somebody can rack up a lot of bans when it's really just one ban and then a bunch of other community servers just following suit. So we wanted to do the best we could to give somebody the benefit of the doubt. There was no proof from the admins, which we think there should have been, but for whatever reason there wasn't. And we allowed Johnny and his team to play on our server. We did tell him it was a 5-man cap, and he listed his 5 men. I told him that if this was baseball and you get 3 chances, because he's been accused of cheating before, you get 1 chance, and I don't need proof. I need heavy suspicion. That's all I need. And not only do we got to ban him, but we got to ban everyone else that he listed as association with cheater. He swore up and down, don't worry, there won't be a problem. That's not going to happen. So that was cool. Now, at the same time as this, our server had been alive for maybe 2 months, almost 2 months, and we were hitting Q, which was pretty fucking cool, because I've been at this for a long time, for a couple years, working for a bunch of different server owners, and then working for KJ, not as staff, but as a player, just kind of in his ear for Adventurers Livonia. And for us to be able to hit this benchmark of hitting Q in Adventurers Chiemsee, which I created in the first 2 months, was wild. Now, fast forward quite some time, and Johnny racked up a team of 12 people on a server that has a max pop of 30. Max pop of 30 because Chiemsee is half the size of Livonia and Chernarus. So 30 here is like 60 in official. And he's 12 of them, which we did not like, and we tried to shut down. But against our own judgment, we decided to let her rip. Now, as much as Johnny's team would like to say they kept the server alive, they kept the server alive after crushing it to death several times. So everyone else left because their mega team just kept crushing everyone. But their mega team kept playing and kept building and kept everything else. So yes, they did keep the server alive after they crushed it to absolute death several times, which is why we didn't want to have big teams here. Now, over time, I started noticing something as a guy named Richard Nasty seemed to find every stash and every base that was on the map. Now, I'm aware of all of the bases and all of the cars and all of the stashes on the entire map, but players obviously are not. Now, you can get lucky. You know, you can flip a quarter 10 times and get heads 10 times. But flipping it 1,000 times and getting heads 1,000 times is technically possible, but it is ridiculous to think that there's not something else at play. So I started investigating Richard Nasty. So now this guy, I can't even fucking do this right now. He would find every stash that there possibly was. I have over 20 accounts of him being the luckiest DayZ player in DayZ history. Now, before I was admin, I had played for over a couple years with teams, and we had strategies for hiding bases, stashes, things like that. And we had over a 90% success rate when it came to our bases and stashes being found over like 7 servers. So I do think I have a good sense of judgment when it comes to bases being hidden. Now, when there is a single player finding literally everything, it raises suspicions. And what would happen is this big team wouldn't play, but Richard Nasty would. And because we pay for extra admin tools, we have GPS of everyone's movements everywhere all the time, obviously in retrospect. But we're able to track it. And Richard Nasty wouldn't visit areas for so long, and then he'd visit areas and find bases immediately, or stashes immediately, very well hidden for the most part. Now, I do understand the concept of accidentally finding stashes and bases and things like that, but for a 10 out of 10 flawless record, this raised massive suspicions. He would find places, and within a few hours, he would call in the team, a bunch of his team members would come online, they would raid, dismantle everything, take everything, and that was it. And people would quit. So, in an investigation of Richard Nasty, I started admin placing crates with random gear in them in places that Richard Nasty had already been but not searched, and he would go straight to them. There's a bunch of cities I've done this in, and he's gone straight to them. Then I started placing cars together, and he would find them within a couple hours. Their mega base in Bergensdorf was raided. I mean, not raided, but I mean, like, their courtyard was broken into. And people would take a bunch of their cars and go hide them. Like, they had like 12 cars. And they'd destroy a bunch of them and hide like 4 or 5 of them in the woods within 1,000 meters of their base. And Richard Nasty would find all of them within a few hours. And then there were other times that people broke into their courtyard and destroyed all their cars. And Richard Nasty would, I call it tagging, but he would tag a bunch of spawn cars, and within 6 hours they would have like 7 cars again. It was like hurting a mega base by destroying all their cars didn't faze them at all. Not at all. And it got to the point where I started building bases just to see if they would find them. Now, there was a place in Übersee that there was a base, and this team, which we call the Bergensdorf Boys, or the Beavers, if you will, they raided an apartment base that was pretty well built, like 15 gates. They raided the whole thing, but rebuilt the front door. And the front door being rebuilt hid any possibility of anyone seeing that the place was raided. So now if the owners logged in, they would know they're raided because all of their inside gates were gone. But from the outside, you couldn't tell this place was raided at all because they built the gate back. They took all the crates, barrels, all that shit. So what I did was I put like 20 crates in the original vault room, which nobody can see, and I loaded it with a bunch of random gear. Now, this team, the Bergensdorf Boys, they had been in and out of the city, not paying attention to this raided base because obviously they were the ones that raided it, until I put crates in it. When I put crates in it, all of a sudden, this team had an interest in re-raiding this base, which I had built all of the doors back. So they re-raided this base and took all of the crates again, and this rose suspicions for me. Because I'm like, I've seen them for weeks work in this town, not care about this base, which would make sense because they raided it and built the door back themselves, so they know they own it. And I put the code back as their own code, which they never checked, which is odd because they could have just punched in their own code, but they didn't. And that raised suspicions. So then I started building bases. Now, I built a base manually, but I spawned in the items. So I used the hammer, I used the nails, all that, and it took me a while. But I piled like 5 cars together in a path line that Richard Nasty had just ran the day before. So he knows there's no cars or anything there. But when he logged into his base, within 1,000 meters is the ESP range, whether you're an admin or a cheater. He went straight to the cars. And I was building a base directly west of that place. I had been at it for about 3 hours. 3 drunken hours. I was just building some cool base as like a dummy base to see if they would come get it. Before I could finish building it, Richard came straight to the base, and I had to log out because I don't want to be a part of PvP on the server. Now, I did this 3 more times, and 2 out of the 3 additional times, Richard Nasty found the base before I could finish the base. These are places that they frequent very often, and are not interested in the middle of the woods locations that I'm building these bases, but Richard is going straight to them once there's something there to find. He even found my admin base, which has a tent that says admin test. And I saw him I saw him near barrels that I put a ton of grenades in, and I messaged him, hey, don't touch that, that's admin. And he goes, oh, I didn't know that was admin. I'm like, you don't see the base right there that says admin test? He goes, well, I saw that, but I didn't know that this was a part of it. I sent pictures to my team, like, we found the mother lode. It's just odd because I literally had a message written in tomatoes in the tent that said admin test. And I totally get the concept that some player could do that to throw people off. But there was nothing there except barrels with explosives and some makeshift base that had a bunch of gates but no locks on it whatsoever. Now, that being said, I was heavily investigating Richard Nasty. I really didn't have Johnny or his buddy on my radar at all. Even though Northmen said they were cheaters, I let that go months ago, and I did my best to investigate them, but this was during our server getting into queue. There were way too many things to watch. We had Brazilians coming in as cheaters, which we had to block the whole country. We had other glitchers coming in. I had a lot of work to do, and I was the only admin here. Now, I started to have it in the back of my mind that maybe there is some cheating involved and I should investigate the other players, since most of the players that were playing on our server at this point was their team. Now, if you know where Bergensdorf is on Chiemsee, there is a railway that heads north. This was the 95% of the time go-to route that the Bergensdorf boys would use to go to the north. They would drive on this, they would run on this, they would stick to this railway like it was the only path they could take. Johnny Boy, Richard Nasty, and one other person were the not only, there were like 7 people in the server. They went from Bergensdorf and ran on the railways north until they got to an industrial train that is barely north of the largest castle area on Chiemsee. And they found barrels. Now, this industrial train is kind of in the open, and people would find this train, see the barrels, and they couldn't deal with it right then, so they would move the barrels to like the nearest bush, which is in the open, and they would deposit these barrels. It was very common for people to do this, but Johnny, Richard Nasty, and one other person, forget his name, I got it on video someplace, they found these barrels in a bush, and very nearby of all the stashes and things like that I would create for Richard Nasty to find, there was a set of 9 barrels, completely empty, in the middle in the middle of a bush, a large bush, in the middle of the woods. Now, I'm not saying this couldn't be found. I'm saying their entire team, GPS-wise, from an admin perspective, had not been within 1,000 meters of this area before I ever placed this stuff. Now, I had placed I placed 2 piles of crates in, I don't remember the city's name, but it is like 2,000 meters north of Bergensdorf. I placed these crates knowing from an admin perspective that there were no dig sites or any other stashes anywhere near here. He found them both in 2 days. Now, this happened over and over and over again, where I was highly suspicious but didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I wanted more proof. Now, in the case I'm talking about with the barrels, there are now 4 barrels found at the industrial site, and because they're at the industrial site and cheaters as well as admins have a 1,000-meter range, they can now see the other 9 barrels, which Richard Nasty makes a beeline straight to, and Johnny Boy decides to run back to base down south, down the railway, while the other 2 guys kind of man the barrel area. Now, this is important because I have temporary staff to help me do tests. Now, what I suspected, as in the video that I have, is that Johnny Boy was running back to get a vehicle to go get the barrels, which, that many barrels, it only makes sense that it would be a truck. So I employed a temporary admin to go with me, and I was going to go visible. So I put all of my admin shit away and dressed, like I was mid-geared. And me and my temporary staff hid behind a pillbox. Now, I had ESP, like player ESP. My temporary staff did not, so they were just listening to me. So we were completely hidden behind the pillbox. And when Johnny started driving towards us, as soon as he got within range where I could see him within the 1,000-meter mark, he started to slow down a lot. Now, when I say that they take the railway for everything, it's fucking everything they take this railway for. But as soon as Johnny could spot two players, me and my temporary staff, because I was visible at this point, even though we were behind the pillbox, he decided to take a hard left and get on a physical road that is out of their way. Now, keep in mind, the barrels they're rescuing are literally on the railroad. It would make sense to stay on the railroad. He took a hard left and got on the physical road, the car road. So I told my temporary staff, we're 700 meters away with 1,000 trees in between us. We can't see each other. But he diverted. So I told my temporary staff, let's run to the physical road and see what happens. We ran to the physical road, and Johnny doubled back, took a hard right, and went back to the railway. At that point, I knew that Johnny can see us. He is avoiding us intentionally. So I told my temporary staff, let's bug out. Let's not make him think that, we're chasing him or anything like that. I wanted two people, me and this other person, so Johnny didn't try to engage. So it wasn't like a one-on-one kind of thing. And Johnny went back to Richard Nasty and the other person, and they looted the barrels and went home. This made me focus on investigations with Richard Nasty and now Johnny. Now, there were 5 other times that I have videos of me catching Johnny using ESP. One of them was a different temporary staff member at Bergensdorf, overwatching Bergensdorf at a 600-meter range, and a different temporary staff member directly east of the fire station, which Johnny spent a lot of time laying down prone. Can't see anything, just AFK for hours at a time. Johnny got tagged in the head, got knocked out, and he called out in our Discord, no, not in our Discord, with me, that the shot was from 600 meters away. He said who the shooter was, which the shooter hadn't been on the server for weeks and weeks, probably months. And that person shot suppressed at 600 meters. And Johnny said 500 to 600 meters. Now, shooting suppressed at that distance, you cannot hear the crack, you cannot see the direction, nothing. Not to mention Johnny was shot in the head, so he was immediately knocked out. Didn't die. I mean, that's a long distance. Bullet damage doesn't do much. So, it's interesting to me that Johnny knows where the shot came from, how far it was, and who it was that shot him. Now, he justified knowing who it was because he said, well, he's the only capable person. The interesting part is Johnny and this other person have never played on the server at the same time legitimately. So Johnny is correctly assuming who the person is that shot him, what distance it was, and what location this player was at. Trust me, this sounds super conclusive now, but I just didn't want it to be true. And that's my fault, and I fucked up. So we did additional tests. So I had my temporary staff that was on the hill, 600 meters away, log out. When I logged out, Johnny went back to business, building and everything like that, as if nobody was there. Now, when this person logged back in, Johnny immediately scrambled as if he knew that somebody was there and protected himself. Now, Johnny was moving up and down a ladder with barrels and placing them where he wanted to, but as he was moving up the ladder, I had my 2 staff members, temporary staff members, log in. One was directly east of Johnny, could have had a shot on him. The other one was almost directly west on a hillside. Now, at the time, Johnny had laid down, and I don't mean prone. I mean like emote, fetal position, laid down, while my temporary staff was logged in. Now I'm talking to my temporary staff, and for about 40 minutes, they stayed in position and Johnny stayed in the fetal position. And I told my temporary staff, oh, my fire's out. I forgot where I left off. So now, after investigating Richard Nasty, I have now found Johnny to be using ESP. Oh, that's right. To fast forward to Johnny laying down in the fetal position while my other two temporary staff members were logged in, I told my two temporary staff members that if they log out, Johnny's going to wake up and go to business as usual. So I had my two temp staffs log out, and what do you know, 4 minutes later, Johnny got out of the fetal position and started building as if no one was around. Now, he was moving barrels up a ladder and placing where he wanted to. I had my two temp staffs log in, and seconds, and I mean like 4 seconds after these guys logged in, Johnny held G, dropped the barrel, and ran to the wall that he had built to hide himself from the shots in the perfect position where neither of my two temp staffs could see him. It was like fucking clockwork. Now, I did this 6 times. Well, I did it 4 times because that was 2 proof. And I had seen Johnny do it several times, not only with them, but with me. With me being the guy that he is avoiding, even though he can't see me. Like, no one, like, I'm not invisible. I'm just behind trees and behind pillboxes with no shot at anybody seeing it. Then a random player is several hundred meters south of Bergensdorf, and Johnny and WTFFD and one other guy are there, and out of nowhere they decide to get out of their towers and get out of their base and run straight at this guy hundreds of meters south of them. Now, I'm watching what is happening with Johnny, which was in last place, like running towards this guy, but they're running straight towards this guy. And then I see WTFFD point at this guy through 1,000 trees and shoot at him. I go into spectating mode, and I realize that there is actual ground between WTFFD and this other guy 200 meters away. WTFFD is pointing straight at this guy, shooting through trees, through a hill, like this. Like if there was a player over here, and you're over here, shooting at him through the mountain. Like, this is what I saw. And I realized that Johnny Boy and WTFFD, a.k.a. Anarchist, a.k.a. Yo Mama, they're the 2 people that got ESP bans on Northman's. I watched this for 40 minutes. They followed this guy. Like, this guy was juking him hard. Nobody was firing shots except WTFFD at this guy suppressed. Now, this guy, random guy, was juking these 3 guys so hard that I started to suspect this random guy of ESP. Now, Johnny and WTFFD and this other guy, I forget his name, every change of movement that this random made, this trio made as well and followed him step by step. And when Johnny's team stopped running, this random team guy stopped running and overwatched. It was like clockwork. And eventually Johnny's team gave up hunting this one guy. Now, at this point, I am sure that Northman's was correct about Johnny Boy and WTFFD having player ESP. Everything fits with the exception that Northman's didn't have proof. I now have proof. I have proof of WTFFD doing it, and I have 6 proofs of Johnny Boy doing it. Now, Richard Nasty, do I have solid proof that he has loot ESP? No. But I have over 20 examples that are ridiculously lucky. Not to mention, long ago past videos that I have that I've been posting on Admin View, I now see that this is looking like loot ESP. The very first one ever is when this server first started, there was nobody on it. There was my old team, because I can't play. So there was my 5-man, and they were fighting another 5-man. All 10 of us came from TSB Livonia during the Alt Wars, where, there were 15 of us and there were 2 of them, and they were killing us 20 times. We killed them a few times, but they kept spawning back in their base in the south of Livonia because they have alts, and at the time, TSB didn't care about alts. I talked a lot to Operativo. He said it's not a big deal. They only changed their alt policy when 10 of us left. That being said, for the first 3 weeks of us playing on Chiemsee, there was nothing to spectate. There was nothing to do. I was bored as an admin, a learning admin, because I had nothing to learn, that I was basically PvEing Chiemsee. I had my player ESP on because I didn't want to interact with players at all. I didn't want to have to shoot them or them to shoot me or anything like that. So I PvE'd a tier 4 island that nobody cared to go to, and it took 10 minutes to swim to. I loot cycled this island 20 times a day. Seems boring, but I try to be as efficient as I can. And I started building random shit based on the things that I found. Now, I built 7 bases. Nothing special. Like 1 or 2 gates, flags and everything. It took me weeks to do it, but there was nothing else to do. And 3 out of the 7 bases had gear in them. Gear that I legitimately looted for no reason, because I'm a loot goblin. Now, Richard Nasty and a few people came to this island, and I had stashes all over the place. I had buried stashes, I had hidden stashes in grass and bushes, like really well hidden. Now, before this, I played for 2.5 years with my team. We had stashes all over Livonia. Now, we had rules. Only 3 burials per area per 1,000 meters. And we had like 40 burials. Not to mention cars all over the place. And every couple weeks, we would go through and refresh the dig stashes and double check what has been found and hasn't been found. And we'd never had a 10% loss. Like up to a 10% loss. So we know our strategies were good. Now, the first time this team had ever been to the island, they found every dig stash and every above ground stash and every barrel. Now, the barrels I had below sea level. So, at least in Chiemsee, there is a high tide and a low tide. So, I'd wait till low tide, walk barrels out into the water until I was forced to drop them. Which means for most of the day, the barrels are not accessible because it's higher tide than low tide. They found everything. And they raided 3 out of 7 of my bases. And wouldn't you know it, they were bases with stuff in them. The other 4 had nothing in them. I was just building because I was bored. It was things like this in retrospect that I realized that they're probably using Loot ESP to do this. Now, I tried to give Johnny's team the benefit of the doubt. They're efficient. There's 12 of them. But over time, I realized that so many people have quit because they raid someplace, take all the planks, all the nails. They basically delete the base. And dozens, 50 plus, maybe 100 people have quit DayZ because of the damage that they're doing. And it's not because they have 12 people. It's because they have players on their team that have ESP and players on their team that have loot ESP. Even at a time where one of their own members went rogue and started attacking them directly, he was chilling in a bush, not moving because I was recording it, and he got shot in the face from 400 meters by Johnny Boy when there was no movement. Now, Johnny Boy was in a tower where there were trees 1,000 meters away, 600 meters away, 400 meters away. This guy had the entire world to scan, and he pulled a third of a helmet out of a bush at a range of 400 meters and headshot. He didn't know it, but his own team member. Then I started seeing a lot of these videos as super suspicious, even though now I had proof. Now, the thing that hurts me the most is that I gave Johnny specifically a second chance. I want to give people the benefit of the doubt, and I believed him, and he put a lot of hours into this server. And he would say that he kept this server alive, but I would say he only kept it alive because his team crushed the fuck out of the rest of our server to the point where it was dead. And Johnny and his team basically PvE'd this map and put those hours back in and kept the server alive. We're going to have a 5-man rule. That's going to happen. Like it's I'm sure it's official by the time I'm posting this. And it hurts me that I have to ban people that I did consider family. But what hurts me even more is the literal tens of thousands of hours that this team destroyed when it comes to other DayZ players that did have legitimately hidden bases, but they weren't hidden because of loot ESP. There were times that Johnny and team would find bases and they're like, oh yeah, it's because we were driving through and we saw the lag. The team is an extremely efficient driver. Like, a lot of them they fly through the map doing 100 kilometers an hour. But ironically, in places that they had never been for weeks, like before these bases were even built, when they got close, they drove slow and experienced the lag. Now, is that proof? No. It's just more suspicion on top of more suspicion on top of more suspicion. So, I personally am 100% convinced that Richard Nasty is using loot ESP. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But in any case, neither side can be 100% proven. They can't be proven. But I cannot, in good conscience, have Richard Nasty still on the server. And because of investigating him, I found out that Johnny Boy and wtffd are using player ESP, which is the same accusation that Northman's banned them for. Now, at some point, if it looks like a duck, it acts like a duck, and it smells like a duck, at some point, even though you can't prove it in the court of law, you have to say this is a duck. That's what I'm doing. My biggest regret is that I did not catch this earlier. And for any of our members that think you were affected by this, I am terribly sorry that I did not see this sooner. I am new at catching cheaters in general because we just don't have them because we are a low to medium pop server. But cheaters in our own ranks, our own family, I didn't expect this to happen anytime soon, especially with this group, even though, from what I said, it seems like I should have expected it. The reason I'm doing this video is because I'm expecting heavy pushback from this team, which doesn't matter anymore. Like, it is what it is. There's nothing I can do. I got to tab out for a second because I got to look at a list here. Now, what I told Johnny when I brought him in to the server is I said, if this is baseball and you get 3 chances, because you've been accused of cheating before, you don't get 3 chances. You get 1. And I don't need proof. I need heavy suspicion. I had him name his 5 guys that he's bringing on. And I told him, if he fucks up, I'm going to have to ban these guys as association with cheater. Now, these players that he listed in the ticket when we prefaced all of this before any of them landed here is Anarchist 420, which not only has a previous ban from Northman's, and I have video proof of him cheating, but Slim Cutta, Smoketrail, Uncle Sam, and SlanginCows. I like SlanginCows. He's got amazing beef jerky. Smoketrail's pretty cool too. I know them the best. I'm sorry, guys. I gotta ban you for association with cheater because Johnny did this to you. Me and KJ both spoke to Johnny in VC and rewrote all the details in a ticket before any of you guys came here. And I told Johnny, he's about ready to fuck this up for a whole bunch of people, innocent or not. if I catch him cheating. He said, "Don't worry about it. Totally cool. I totally understand. If you're even suspicious, you got to ban us, but you won't be suspicious." I got to do what I said I was going to do. So I got to ban Anarchist for ESP because I have proof. I got to ban Johnny for ESP because I have 6 proofs. I got to ban Richard Nasty because I have heavy suspicion of loot ESP. 20 counts. Easy 20 counts. And I got to ban Slim Cutta, Smoketrail, Uncle Sam, and SlanginCows with association to cheater. Insert Steam ID here. I have to do that. Now, I am going to be attaching the proof, the videos, for the admins or owners of servers that can see this. The only reason I gave you guys a chance is because the previous admins didn't show proof. I am here to show proof. I'm really sorry this happened to you guys. I didn't want to be the guy to do this. This does fucking hurt. I know you may or may not believe that. But the person that did this to all of you is Johnny. He is an ESP cheater. He does not know how to play the game fairly. And you guys have been a part of it. And if you guys stick with him, you guys are cheaters. And if you don't stick with him, great, then you can move on. But unfortunately, Johnny has given you guys scars, and they are in the form of community bans. And I'm going to make it very clear in the tickets of the bans that this is not a shared ban. This is independent. And here's the proof. Now, I honestly didn't want it to be like this, guys. But this is how it turned out, and I'm doing the best I can. But all good things come to an end. And I'm sorry it was this way, but it is. See you guys in another life.